Okay, I think it's time. I think it's time we get rolling. Get my notes. Let me get my tea. Let me get my cool sunglasses. There we go. All right, cool. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to masterclass number 71. That's a lot of masterclasses. My name's Chris. I'm going to be your host. I'm a marketing manager for Planetar, but I was a photographer for many years, and I have lots of experience with the capture process, the technology, the floor plans, the iGUIDE viewer, and so on. So today we're going to talk about floor plans. So very specifically, what I'd like to do with this webinar is give you a sense of comfort with floor plans. So, I mean, there's a lot of details on the floor plans, and often what I find is that people don't really engage with them beyond the fact that they're floor plans, and they just kind of provide them to clients and like, here you go. Expecting that other people will understand. So what I'll do, and that can lead to questions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through some of the details on the floor plan. It's very simple stuff. Like, this won't take long. It's very easy. So that when you are giving floor plans to your clients, you can be really confident and comfortable talking about them because you'll know what everything is on them. And then in addition to that, what I'd like to do as well, if I can, is add some value. Or I should rephrase that. I want to give you the ability to understand why, first of all, floor plans have value, just in general, but then also give you the ability to, in a very simple way, speak to why iGUIDE floor plans are better. So there you go. Plans. I'd like to kind of discuss or tell you about, I should say, floor plans and their role in marketing a property. So I think that it's often confusing for people when they think about what floor plans are for. Like, I think people get, you guys can correct me in the chat if I'm wrong, that floor plans are a high value, useful item for a real estate listing. For any as built structure, they're useful. But sometimes people don't think beyond that. So I had a few experiences when I was shooting where I would give people the talk. I'd tell them, oh, you're going to get 3D tour, you're going to get room dimensions, you're going to get floor plans. And they'd say, oh, that's awesome. And then they totally would never use the floor plans. It was like, why? Why didn't you don't use them for anything? Like, nah, I didn't feel like printing them out. I'm like, that's not all floor plans are for, but okay. So I think that people know that they're good, but they don't necessarily know why. So that's sort of funny. So I'm going to tell you sort of some reasons why. So one reason why they're good for marketing, you can tell your clients this is for all floor plans, by the way, is that they're perceived as like a high value thing. So they make your marketing like look good. People look at it and think, oh, they did a floor plan. Oh, that's good. So that alone is just sometimes enough, which is sort of funny. But then the other reason why floor plans are good is that people just like them, which is a weird thing. Why they like them, I don't really know. But I have a study that I'm going to show you right now. That is the National Association of Realtors, Buyers and Sellers report, where, let me load it up on screen. Hope you guys can see this. Floor plans are ranked number 3 in sort of like what buyers want to see when they're on the internet. So this is just people who are on the internet, which I hope is everyone, but whatever. They put it in there, so that's what I'm saying. But number 1, so I hope you guys can see this. Number 1 is photos. Okay, there's no surprise there. Number 2 is detailed property information, and that makes perfect sense, right? When I'm looking at properties online personally, I'm going to immediately be looking at the first thumbnail photo, and then I'm going to continue to look at the photos on that listing, throughout my online experience. But the second thing I'm going to look at personally is exactly that. How many bedrooms does it have? What's the square footage? Like, I want to know a little bit of information, because I can immediately disqualify, houses if they're like a 1-bedroom or something. Like, okay, that's not going to work. I have a family. Even if it looks cool, I might dive in to have a little look if it's quirky, but most of the time I'm going to disregard that and I'll waste my time. Or I'll even just sort properties straight up by those variables. And the third thing, check this out, is floor plans. So floor plans outranks virtual tours, video, neighborhood information, like stuff that is like, everyone thinks is really, really important. But floor plans is ranked as higher than those by potential buyers. So that's a big deal. So that's a straight up stat you can just use like right there. If someone asks, or if you're trying to convince someone that your floor plans are awesome. Now, I would argue that the benefit, or maybe the function, the purpose of a floor plan is perfectly illustrated in an iGUIDE. So let's load one up and I'll show you. Do I have one? Oh, look, I even loaded one up ahead of time. Good for me. Okay, so here we have an iGUIDE. Obviously, iGUIDEs have floor plans in them. We're going to talk more about that in a minute. But that floor plan, it's not just there for show. It's not just there to look cool. It's providing like a function. Like it does something for you, and it's beneficial, I would argue. So when I'm looking at photos, this is my personal experience again, I'm getting a sense of the space, what it looks like, and what it would be like to be there. Cool. But sometimes I want an experience that's more like a floor plan where it's a map. Okay, so where is this room in the home? Okay, well, the floor plan tells me where it is. How does this room connect? How does the flow? How are the paths through the house? What's the size of this room relative to other rooms? So the floor plan shows me that. So that's the value that is being added here. There's actually a few more things. So in terms of navigation on an iGUIDE, the floor plan allows me to like a map kind of go to a location I click on. So that's obviously hugely valuable as well. But I would argue that is the main purpose of a floor plan. So the reason I say that, and that it's not the measurement aspect, is that I'm referring to the floor plan in its sort of visualized form, not necessarily the total square footages, although those are extremely important and they're related to the floor plan, obviously. But the floor plan, as a visual representation that you use, I'm going to say that the benefits are being able to see the connections between spaces, their relative sizes, and being able to navigate on that, obviously on something like an iGUIDE. Okay. So now that we got that out of the way, I think what we're going to talk about, let me check the chat real quick. Hi from Dubai. Hi from Canada. Good evening from Germany. Hey, Germany. It's Canada here. And then we've got 2 questions already. Oh, okay, I'll answer these questions now. These are good questions. All right. Hi, Chris. Kind of business question. Is there any way to just use the floor plan option of iGUIDE? Clients sometimes need just the floor plan, not 3D tour. The answer is sort of, but no. So think of iGUIDE like a system that measures a property, and as a weird side effect, you get a 3D tour. So with something like a competing system, it might be the reverse. It almost always is. You're shooting a property to get the tour, and then you can make a floor plan from that data. But iGUIDE's the other way around. So that means that if you just want a floor plan, it's not going to be as friendly as if you want the whole package. Basically, you have to shoot it in its entirety. So you can't, it's not like you save an enormous amount of time on the, the shooting. However, you can do certain things like turn HDR off. If you don't care about the 3D tour, then it doesn't matter what it looks like. It doesn't have to be pretty. So that means you can get in and out of the house faster, but you're still going to have a similar amount of work to do, depending on the property size. You could probably cut it in half. Actually, now that I've said that, you can move it a lot faster if you need to shoot fewer scans. Well, either way, anyway, you save time on the shooting, but you don't save any time or money on the processing. It's identical. And when you get your iGUIDE back, it's going to be exactly what you think it is, which is a full iGUIDE. What you choose to give your client, well, you can just give them the floor plans if you want. So there's no price break. There's no other package. At the moment, there is no way also to get the 3D tour experience, but without the 360 visuals. There's no way to just have a floor plan. Like you can't like full screen it. So if you're going to do floor plans only, typically what people do is they'll go shoot the property. They'll turn HDR off because the images don't matter. They'll shoot the minimum number of scans to make it nice and fast. And then they'll just provide their client with the PDF version. So the PDF version of the floor plan has obviously the floor plans in it, but it also has the room details. So all the room dimensions and square footage are all there. So it is in itself its own self-contained kind of package. So you can just hand that over and that'll work. And yes, I also hate that you go to other options for that. Is it possible to rename rooms for the floor plan, especially in German language? Yes. So I'll briefly describe it. I'm not going to give a visual demo because we're running out of time, but if you go to the iGUIDE portal on the My iGUIDES list and look at your list of properties, click the blue edit button, scroll down in the preview, every single room label is editable. And you can also add new room labels by clicking in the top corner and choosing add a label. So yep, 100%, you can edit any room label you want. Follow up, if floor plan is number 3 in the list and placed higher than video and 3D tour, why you guys don't offer floor plan only? Well, that's the thing, it's funny. So the floor plan is baked into the iGUIDE. This is where people kind of get a little confused. It's not like the floor plan is its own thing and the 3D tour is its own thing. No, the 3D tour is visuals and a floor plan. They're one thing. And they need to be one thing for that experience, that iGUIDE experience to occur. So if you think about it, essentially we do offer floor plans only. You just discard the 3D tour. In order for the drafts people to draw the floor plan, they need the visuals. So it's the exact same process either way. There's no time savings on our end. So that means there's no deal or anything. But I get your point. You're totally right. Okay, I'm going to say I answered these. Answer. Look at me. I know I said I was going to wait till the end to do questions, but I just really like answering questions. Can I order just the floor plan without complete iGUIDE? No, sorry, you can't. You have to shoot the iGUIDE and then discard the rest and keep just the floor plan. A much longer, I hope you heard actually parts of what I said earlier, but a much longer detailed explanation preceded your question, I think. Okay, let's move on. So I'm going to show you some things, some features of iGUIDE floor plan so that everybody knows what it is that we're dealing with here. So let's load one up. Close the chat here. All right, here's a floor plan. Hey, so on this floor plan, let's go to the full size one. On this floor plan, there are a few details that you may or may not know the purpose of. So I'm just going to literally tell you. Okay, so you're going to see little arrows at the edges of the room. So those markers represent the boundaries of the rooms as they are labeled. So it says here, kitchen. So the kitchen is obviously, sort of a rectangular shape, and the edges of that kitchen area, that bit of area that represents the kitchen, are defined by those little arrows you see there. Okay, so those little arrows represent the room dimensions. So this is actually a really great example. Down here, if you look at this living room down here, can I zoom in a bit? I wonder. I can. Oh, look at that, fancy. Okay, so we've got this living room. Now you can see this living room is not a rectangle. So and you guys might already know this, you might not. I'm going to tell you anyway. Room dimensions are longest length to widest width. So that can be very frustrating for some people, because if you have a room that's not a rectangle, there are different ways of measuring that room, and there is no one agreed upon standard. So our standard that we use, that's generally across the board considered to be acceptable, is longest length times widest width. So where it says here 11 foot 2 inches multiplied by 11 foot 6 inches, that represents the dimensions as they're shown by those little arrows. Those little arrows show you what those room dimensions are referring to. So you can see that this particular living room narrows, toward the bottom of the page there. So you can tell from looking at the room dimensions and looking at those arrows that that's not referring to that area. It's referring to the area up here. So if you multiply those two numbers, you will actually not get the total square footage of the space, which sounds weird and crazy, but that's just the only way to do it. And that's the way we do it. So on a room that's more rectangular, obviously it's much easier. So you can see the bathroom, it's basically a perfect square up here. So that's, it makes sense. But then you're going to have spaces like the kitchen where, yep, that's even weirder. You've got like a corner cut off, and then this space is not clearly defined. I don't think it is anyway. Let's look. No, it's not. Okay, so it's a big open concept space. So what that means is that the drafts people have to choose a place for that space to end. They usually choose a logical place. So you can see they've lined it up with the edge of the living room here. So they do their best to make it make sense. but they're interpreting the data here, so there can be some creativity there, especially like with a corner like that. Either way, that brings us to our next feature that I want you to notice, and that's room colors. So it's a common misconception that the room colors are just like decorative. The answer is they are not. They have significance. So every kitchen will be this weird green color. There are color schemes. I'm going to show you in a second, but if you choose a particular color scheme within that scheme, every bathroom will be blue. Every living room will be this weird beige. The dining rooms will be brown. I think the bedrooms are like brown or something. No, they're like a beige, whatever. So this particular color scheme, I think, is balanced. So that means it has a kind of mix of warm and cool elements. It's kind of neat, kind of breaks things up, but I think it's my favorite. So those mean something. Now, the important one, the really important one, is white. So white means that it is not included in the total square footage. So that's really important. So that shows you that space, this huge, massive space that's added onto the house, it's not in the total. So that's important, because one of the really huge benefits of floor plans is that even if a space isn't included in that total, you can still show it. So that's really cool. So it's different a little bit everywhere you go in North America, but for the most part, generally speaking, people will include, when they're listing a property, a total square footage that is above grade. What's above and below grade is debatable again, but for the most part, people don't choose the basement. But the basement has a lot of value, in terms of like what it provides for the house. Like, I'm in my basement. It's quite nice. I don't think I could live without it. All my cool toys are down here, right? What would I do with my day, if I didn't have all these guitars decorating my walls? Anyway, so showing spaces like a basement is what, something floor plans are really good at. So the fact that you can show those spaces, even if they're not included, but they appear in the floor plan, you can see immediately that they're there, but let's see, those aren't in the total. So that's kind of cool. The other thing that I think I wanted to point out about, sort of room boundaries, is that there is no one right answer for exactly where a room boundary should go. So the draftspeople really, they just try to do their best to decide where it goes. I don't know if I mentioned that before. So there's a few other things on here I'll just point out. I don't think this is a premium floor plan. No, it's not. I should have chosen a better one. Either way, you're going to have elements and details that are, here, let me load one up for this. Oh, you know what? I've got one over here. There you go. Yeah, I'll show you this one. Okay, so we've got premium elements that can appear. So it doesn't come up too often, but just so you know, the dishwasher looks like that. Refrigerator looks like this. And you'll have cabinets and things drawn in. And that's what those represent, if you didn't know. That's a toilet. I don't know. It's probably really obvious. But those elements are placed where they actually are supposed to go. So they're not just randomly like tossed in there. They're like, it's on purpose where they are. So that's why, in case you're ever curious, why we have suggested in the past that you make sure that the camera is up higher in something like a kitchen and maybe in a bathroom. So if you haven't heard that before, this is why. So you want to raise the camera up, because then what the draftspeople are going to do is they're going to look at your images, and they're going to figure out the precise placement of things like sinks and dishwashers and things that are up a bit higher, so that they can put them on the floor plan like accurately. So those aren't just tossed there. They're not guessing. They're trying to get them to be in their like actual like correct position. And then since I have it up, I'll just mention it. The biggest difference between standard and premium is those details, sinks and toilets and bathtubs and whatever. There's obviously a difference in price. And the reason that there's a difference in price is that a physical person has to actually go in there and figure out, like it requires them time to figure out where those elements go. So, that's an additional value, right? Like you're paying for it obviously, but the time and the work that goes into that is not insubstantial. Okay, let's talk about color schemes real quick. There's like a cool widgety thing on here I made like a million years ago. Let's see if it works. Yeah, it does. Okay, so people ask constantly if they can change the colors on the floor plans. And like I said, the colors are not random. They represent stuff. So, we don't give you the ability to change them individually. I know some people do, but we don't, because they have meaning for us, and that's why. That's kind of what I'm getting at. However, there are color schemes you can work with. So even if you don't exactly like what you do have some flexibility. So there's balanced, which has a bunch of weird beiges and like a little green thing going on here. You've got warm. That's a lot of beige. Look at that. It's a kaleidoscope of Band-Aid colors. I love it. We have cool. That's frosty. It's kind of nice. And we have gray. Really weird fun fact. The gray is very popular. I feel like it's the most boring one, but hey, if you like it, that's cool, but it's very popular. People use it way more often than I ever would have expected, which is sort of funny. So the way you change the color profiles is by going to the portal, finding your iGUIDE in the My iGUIDE section, clicking the blue edit button, and in the top right hand corner, you're going to see there's all these options on there. You'll see a thing for selecting the color theme for the floor plans. Fun fact: you can choose a different one for the 3D tour than for sorry, I'm blanking out. Then for the PDFs. So if you want the 3D tour to be really colorful, you go with balanced, and then you're like, oh, I want a serious PDF. It's all business. You can go with gray. I don't know if Billy people ever do that, but you can. So it's kind of cool. Or if someone specifically requests that difference for some reason, you can cater to that. I don't know. All right, cool. So there's a few details on here I didn't mention. They should probably be sort of obvious, but I'll go through them anyway. So you've got windows. So those are represented by the obviously blue, breaks in the exterior sort of walls of the floor plan. Let me load up the actual iGUIDE again. There you go. You've got door swings. So door swings are obviously the directions doors swing, and they're represented by a little line and then like a little sort of connecting arc that goes from the door jamb to the edge of the door. It's kind of cool. You've got obviously stairs. So stairs are done in this peculiar way. I was actually mentioned, Marius described it in our last masterclass, the sort of drafting Q&A one. We talked about why they do it this way, which I didn't know, which is very cool, but it makes sense. So you can see the stairs kind of go up, but then in order for you to get a sense of the fact that there's two staircases, there has to be this like point at which you switch from one staircase to the other, supposing that they're on top of each other. So they do that with this little wall. And I was like, wow, that makes sense. Of course you do that. How else would you do it otherwise? Because if you didn't, you wouldn't know where to stop or start them. Anyway, I thought that was quite cool. So that's kind of neat. What else have we got? Oh, I mentioned that, included versus excluded. So I'm going to say it again because it's so important. Anything white on the floor plan, so that's garages, cold cellars, 3-season rooms, anything white is not included in the total square footage. Cool. Okay, let's talk about deliverables now. So how are we doing for time? We're doing good. Okay, so deliverables means, what do you get when you're ordering this? Because you don't just get PDF floor plans. There's a lot more than that. So we're going to start right here with this floor plan. So a lot of people take this for granted, the fact that you get a floor plan in the iGUIDE. Every iGUIDE has a floor plan. And it's not like a stylistic representation of a floor plan. This is legitimately a real actual floor plan that you can measure on. And it's nearly identical to the one, it is identical, but obviously it's presented differently to the one in the PDF and the SVG and the DXF and all that stuff. So this particular floor plan has a very unique and amazing advantage. It probably is, I'm just going to say it, it's the best floor plan because you can measure on it. So typically with a floor plan, what you would do is you would have a scale bar. Actually, I'll even show it. There you go. So if you look here, you've got a scale bar. So that means that, obviously the distance from end to end of this bar is 8 feet. And then if you were to measure on this floor plan, you could measure details based on that scale bar. That's a very old school way of doing it. You don't need to do that anymore. It's 2021. We have on-screen measurements now. So this floor plan allows you to measure anything you want right on there. And that is one of the greatest strengths of the iGUIDE, is that this simple way of measuring on a floor plan is just so useful. All the lines are persistent. So if you want to measure for, I don't know, a couch, this is a terrible couch. That's okay. Moving on. You can do that. You can measure windows, you can measure doors, you can measure whatever you want. And it's so fast that it's absolutely lovely to work with. So when you're looking for houses, a lot of your questions, well, a lot of a homeowner's or potential home buyers' questions are like about measurement. They're like, well, is this going to fit, or how big is this, or if I put a couch here, can I walk in between this thing and this thing? And like all those questions can be answered from here. So that's one of the huge advantages of this floor plan. You can certainly do that on other floor plans, but here it's like baked in, right? It's easy. So it's fun fact time, something a lot of people don't know. If you click the measurement button, there's a download button here. If I click the download button, it will actually download the floor plan with the measurements on it. Can I load it up and show you? Oh, I totally can. Check that out. Okay, so that's ridiculously cool. You could also just screen capture if you really felt like it, but it's baked in. That was a thing that was added for IRC so that you could bring floor plans into separate software rate it as data into separate software and sketch it. But here's the coolest thing about this. Let's suppose you want to go order an area rug. Okay. So typically what you do, before you truck it over to IKEA is you get your tape measure out, kind of measure, and maybe you do a little weird drawing or whatever. And you kind of think about what would be a cool thing for the space. So rather than do that, I mean, you could also just bring your phone with the iGUIDE, provided you have one for your house. What you do is you take this and you actually draw out approximately the size of the rug that you're looking at. And then you hit save. And then you can use that as a reference when you're like doing stuff, save it on your phone or whatever. And you can basically have this little record of all the measurements that you're taking, because these aren't like permanent. Obviously you can't save them, but if you save it as a JPEG, you totally can. So if you're doing sort of comparison shopping, you can actually draw in things that you're considering getting, or measuring for blinds is the best one. You can measure all the windows and save it. And then if you're going around the different stores and shopping, you don't have to load up the iGUIDE every time and like measure it in. Very cool. Anyway, that's the benefit of this floor plan, is that it's interactive. I mean, obviously, other than that, you can like click on it and like look at stuff. That's cool too. Also, this floor plan is connected to the visuals, which means that if you really want to, you can also measure using advanced measurement modes using the actual visuals. I won't go into huge detail because we're going to run out of time, but very cool. Okay, so the next type of floor plan, probably the most obvious one everyone knows about, is PDFs. PDFs are cool. You can, they're considered kind of a high value thing. You can print them out. You can take them and chop them up and put them in other documents and brochures, and they'll go in the feature sheet creator if you want, which is quite cool. The PDFs have a really cool advantage that you guys actually, did kind of get to earlier, which is that they kind of stand on their own. So that if you want to deliver floor plans only, they have everything. All the room dimensions are in here. Method of measurements in here. We'll get to that in a minute. There's, all sorts of cool explanations and stuff in here. It's awesome. You can have those be a downloadable in addition to the iGUIDE, and they can just be a different way to get that information, which is kind of neat. So the 3D tour and the PDFs, everybody knows about those. Now we're going to talk about the weird ones. Actually, the first one's not weird. It's just JPEGs. So you can get JPEG floor plans and you can include them in the gallery. I don't think they're in the gallery. I don't have one, but putting the floor plans in the gallery is just another way to get people to see them. And it's very popular to have on your listing portal, whatever that may be, realtor.com, realtor.ca, to get your agent to put those floor plans in the gallery so that when people are swiping through, they don't just miss them. Now, every listing portal is a little different. Some of them will show the iGUIDE really in a very large way, like right up front, so everyone can see it. Some other ones hide stuff, like Zillow and realtor.com. They've got like buttons here or there. So when you click on it, yeah, it'll load it up, but they're not immediately obvious. So because photos, so we're piggybacking on the fact that everybody knows that photos are like number one, right? So if you can take the floor plans and put them in the photos, then people won't miss them. They're going to see it because they're going to be looking at the photos because everyone knows that they're there. So JPEGs are exactly what they sound like, the JPEGs. Then you've also got SVGs. So SVGs is a vector format, scalable vector graphics, and those are used when you want to do well, like some weirder, more custom stuff. So PDFs can do this too, but SVGs are good if you want to do some really weird custom stuff. So if you've got a certain look that you're going for, you can straight up download the SVGs. You can change any of the room colors. You can use either Acrobat or Adobe Illustrator or any other editing software that can deal with vector graphics to make changes. And when you do that, they'll be scalable, which means there's no, well, essentially there's no resolution. So what I mean by that is if you download a JPEG and you try to make it bigger, you're going to run out of resolution at some point. It'll start getting pixelated. But scalable vector graphics, or EPS files or AI files or whatever, they don't do that. They're not, bitmap to data. They're like vectors instead, which just means like lines. So they're scalable. So that's really cool. So that means that if you have a really high-end client who has a design department, and they want to take the floor plans, do something really wacky with them, no problem. Give them the SVGs, easy. SVGs are used to get really, really good results when you're doing kind of tricky things with the floor plans. So the last one I'm going to talk about is DXFs. So DXFs are funny. So a lot of residential real estate photographers don't really work with AutoCAD. They don't work with any kind of CAD software. So DXFs are sort of mysterious. And there's lots of other files, CAD file formats that sound a bit like DXF. So it's very confusing. But I'm going to show you what they look like. And they're really cool. Okay, so DXFs are a drafted floor plan, okay? But they also contain the point cloud data, and everything's organized into layers. So the reason you might want that is if you are an architect or a designer or a contractor or someone who wants more information, and also someone who just works with CAD. So if you're working with CAD, it's easy. You can bring it right in. But here, I'll show you what they look like. Okay, so here's a DXF. So I'm just using like a cheap free viewer. Doesn't let me do much, but hope you can see that all of the lines are here in terms of the walls. They look different. So you've got, just going to zoom in a bit. See, the red line represents the interior wall. This green line represents the exterior wall. So the outside of the exterior wall. So this is the inside of the exterior wall. This is the outside. So this is the interior. It's the exterior. All the interior walls are obviously present. What is this? That was a dentist office. That's why it's weird. Okay. But you've probably already noticed that there are a lot of dots. So that's the actual point cloud data that you shot. And every DXF has this. It's going to have the point cloud data, and then on top of it, the drafter's interpretation of that property. So this is really cool. So if you are an architect or designer, and you're getting a lot of value out of the floor plans, but there's some weird detail that you need more information about, it's there. It's in the DXFs in the point cloud sometimes. So that can add an extra, make it a little bit easier to design around certain objects because you'll have more measurement data than is actually shown in the floor plan. The trouble with DXFs is that for a layperson to describe their use, it can be very challenging. So I don't have AutoCAD. I can't just load it up and show people what it is. But if you have, so I'll tell you what to do. So if you are working with an architect or a designer and they ask you, hey, I need a CAD file, say, okay, I have DXFs. And they might be like, what's a DXF? Like sometimes they don't know. So what you do is you just send them a sample. And the way you find a DXF is you go on the portal, find your property, click the blue edit button, go on the left, go down, it'll say DXF floor plans right in the bottom left-hand corner. Click it and you'll download them. Now, when you download them, you won't be able to view them unless you have some kind of CAD software. So what you can do is get a piece of software like this. So this is DWG Fast View. I don't know, it's pretty good. It is very fast. So I've got it here. I can look at DXFs. I can zoom in. I can't really do much about anything else, but it's kind of cool. It kind of shows me what someone would see if I were to send it to them. So this, again, can build some confidence here. You can actually look at the DXFs. So when you're providing them to people, you can talk confidently about what's actually included, which is kind of nice. The DXFs are a little different, and so are the SVGs, in that they're not included in the iGUIDE report. So that means there's an extra step if you need to send them to somebody. That's not a bad thing or a good thing. It's just something to consider. So if you've got an architect or an engineer, it's not as simple as just taking the tour and then sending the report and you're done. So just raised their hand. How does that work? Did you ask a question in the chat? Oh, I'm not sharing the DXF screen. You got to be kidding me. This whole time I've been talking. Okay, that's hilarious. There you go. Okay, now you can see it. All right, so I'll just edit it in. No one will know the difference. Okay, here's the DXF. Anyway, have a look. It's a good idea to download a sample and like kind of mess around with one that you're familiar with. It'll help you out. Cool. What are we up to now? Okay, we're gonna run out of time, so I'm gonna hit the benefits of iGUIDE floor plans over other floor plans. There's lots. Benefit number one. I'm gonna switch screens again. Sorry, you're not gonna see the DXFs anymore. Oops, new share. Let's go back to this one. Okay, benefit number one is that you can measure on the floor plans. I already went over that, but that these floor plans are real. So they're not like stylized weird floor plans. They're in the 3D tour. They're actual floor plans. Number two, method of measurement. So let's go back to let's go to the PDFs. I realize now that you guys weren't seeing my PDFs either. That's embarrassing. Do I have them loaded up? Where did it go? Oh no, you guys would, because it's in the browser. You would have seen it. Never mind. Okay, so anyway, PDFs. They have the method of measurement built in, as does the iGUIDE. So unlike other floor plan providers, it's not as though these floor plans were just drawn by some random person according to what they think floor plan should look like. There are very specific reasons why things are drawn, and certain things are included and excluded, and all of that means that you're going to get very consistent results, and that the data from these floor plans can be used to list a property with confidence because you'll know exactly what you're talking about. So that's kind of cool. Fun fact, this is a cool one, and you guys have probably noticed this, I hope, is that our turnaround time is like really good for floor plans. Like we are a market leader right now. We can get floor plans back to you faster than almost anyone else, with the exception of someone who's just waiting there just to draw your floor plan. So turnaround time for floor plans can be 2 to 4 days in some cases. So, it's all well and good to have that virtual tour done in like, 15 minutes if it's all automated, but without the listing information, without the floor plan and listing data, it can be much more challenging to list a property in a lot of places. So how cool is that? Market leader. And then let's see, let's go back here. And then I mentioned this already, the ability to measure on the floor plan is huge. That's absolutely massive, and a huge advantage. And then the ability to get access directly to the point cloud without paying an extra cost is also quite cool. That's sort of like a side note. All right, I'm going to stop talking and answer questions because I can see that there's literally 11 questions. All right, I already answered that one, so no. Okay, if you do more scans, does that increase the accuracy of the measurements? No, not exactly. So, I mean, it could under certain really weird random circumstances, but for the most part, not really. The reason that you want to do more scans, there's 2 reasons why you want to do more scans. The first is measurement coverage. So you want to be able to make sure that you got everything. So if a room is, the geometry is complicated, you want to make sure you get the camera into all the spaces so you can get all those complicated details. So that improves accuracy in terms of what is drawn, but also, can improve accuracy in terms of square footage because they'll catch things they might have missed. So I'm going to give you an example of accuracy, but not accuracy in terms of square footage. So let's suppose I shoot a second story of a house and there's 2 bedrooms, and in between the 2 bedrooms, there are closets, and I don't shoot those closets. Okay, well, the drafters they're pretty smart. They're going to know what the perimeter is. They're going to know those are closets from the visuals, but they won't know where the wall is between the 2 closets. So if I do more scans, open up the closets and shoot and hit the back wall, they'll know precisely where that wall is. So that's essentially, if they draw the wall in the right place, that means it's more accurate. So that's an example. The other reason why you would do more scans is just to change the experience of the tour. So sometimes more scans just makes it easier to see details people want to see, and it gives them a different sort of walk-through experience when they're navigating visually. So that's why you would shoot more scans, not really for accuracy. With the new update, what HDR option would you recommend to avoid blown out windows? Okay, I'll get to that one in a minute because we'll do that last. sometimes we face two different elevations on the same room. Is that any feature to show the elevation details of the floor plan? So no. So the elevations on the floor plan will be separated by like a line. There is a thing, I think. I don't have an example of that, but it's essentially like a stair. But that's not really, unless it's a big elevation change, in which case it's a totally separate floor. Either way, no, there's no, well, I mean, the visuals, obviously you'd see it. There is a thin line. Anyway, there, done. I don't want to go off topic, but wanted to ask if iGUIDE has any means to do a live guided tours. Yeah, there's iGUIDE virtual showing. I don't know if that's what you're getting at. Okay, so there's two things actually. So a live, so you said live. So live tour implies that someone is giving the tour. So the way you would do that would be to click the share button, the chat window, click create virtual showing, and then go through that process. So I won't go into any detail about virtual showings, but those are live guided tours. You know, they basically allow you to take control of someone else's screen and show them the iGUIDE and walk them through it, which is quite cool. Done. It's live. Done. There we go. Okay. Amazingly accurate. Over 66 feet. Width of a church I did within 6 millimeters. Yeah, we've actually got some really cool measurement statistics that are coming down the pipeline. It is really accurate. It's very cool. Okay. Thank you, Peter. Awesome. PDF document is always English, right? Is it possible to order in German? Yeah. So if you change the room labels, they'll all change as well. So, okay. Another fun fact. I didn't even think of that. When you're changing room labels on the iGUIDE floor plan and the PDFs and the SVGs, they're all connected. I should have mentioned this in the benefits. Okay, this is a cool one. So what I mean by connected is that when you go into the editor and you change a room label, it doesn't just change on the iGUIDE. It changes for the PDFs and the SVGs as well. So everything is together. So that means that if you change it on the iGUIDE, it changes on the PDF and it changes on the SVG, which means if you made a feature sheet with the feature sheet creator, it's also changed there too. So you just have to basically change them all on the editor and then they'll stick. All right, I answered that one. Couldn't see the DXF. Sorry about that. So that one, yes. Do we need to uncover curtains to show where windows are placed? Does the drafter approximate its location or does he need the frame edges exposed? So that's an excellent question. They're not super fussy about it just because in the real world, I mean, you know, it probably isn't practical to like go to every window and uncover it. However, that being said, if accuracy is your primary concern and you want those windows placed perfectly, the answer is yes. Yeah, you would. You want to make sure the drafters can see exactly where it starts and stops, so they know the precise place to put that window and its width. I answered that. Good. Thanks. Answered that. Answer yes. Okay. Does iGUIDE have Bluetooth capabilities? Could I connect the iGUIDE to the Room Scanner app for locometric? So the answer is no. So it doesn't use Bluetooth. It's purely Wi-Fi. And it only works with the app built into the camera for now. Best practices for shooting small areas like closets. Right. Everybody hates closets. I hate closets too. Okay. Best practice. Always shoot closets, especially if they're on a perimeter. And when you shoot closets, try your best to capture some data from like the back wall of the closet. So your goal here is to get accurate floor plans. So that means that you want to make sure that the drafters can see what the dimensions are of every space, including all the little weird ones, like closets. In a perfect world, every closet would just be empty and it would be super easy, but we don't live in that world. So the best thing you can do is scan every closet that you can get your hands on. It does take extra time, but whatever, it's for the best. If a closet is just full of stuff and it's an interior closet, do your best. Scan it anyway, at least they'll know what it is. And then if you come across, this is very rare, by the way, you come across a closet that happens to be on the exterior of a property, it happens to be just full of junk, then you might need to reach in and kind of move some stuff to either side so you can hit the back wall. And then really rare, this has only ever happened to me like twice out of thousands of properties, you might have to just ask the homeowner, hey, I need you to, like, if they're there, I need you to move some stuff. Like I need to measure that back wall. And often they're like, yeah, no problem. Like once they figure out that you're measuring and that you're not photographing that, like for the virtual tour, they're usually like super cool about it. Just moving stuff in general. People get a little weird when they think you're photographing their trashed closets, but when you tell them it's just for the floor plans, they're usually fine. So yes, shoe closets. If a client doesn't want a small room scan, can we exclude it from the floor plan upon request? Yeah, kind of. So, okay, so here's what you do. I'm going to give you my hot take on this. So it's so common. So that there's two most common problems all photographers and especially iGUIDE photographers face. So all photographers, you show up to the property and it's not ready yet. It's the number one thing, the number one problem. So that's annoying. The second most common problem is that you show up and they've done something where they've created like a dump room, where they've cleaned up certain areas, but not all areas. And so they get a little weird about like you going into like messy spaces. They often say like, can you just not put that one on there? And the answer is, of course, we're not going to show the ugly space, right? But it still needs to be measured. So that means that I'm still going to go in there with this camera thing and I'm still going to shoot it. And the reason that you want to measure it is that it will be included in the total square footage. If you don't measure it, then the total square footage will essentially be wrong. And you can absolutely publish an iGUIDE with that omitted. But that's really dangerous because then you've got these square footage totals and it's not clear that they're missing stuff. So it's probably obvious because I mentioned it in every webinar, but I'll just say it again because it's really important. The total square footage of a property is used to determine its value. So if someone buys a property thinking it's 5,000 square feet, and then when they buy it, they find out it's 4,800 square feet, they get really angry about that 200 square feet that they just thought they paid for. And it's totally like irrelevant in most cases, but that's just how it works. So that means that although you can technically exclude it from the floor plan, I would recommend that you never do that. And also, unless you're absolutely desperate, which is fine, you can always turn off all the measurements, but you can totally exclude the images. Yeah. So turning panos on and off, you have total control over what people, see and what they don't see. So you can just go into the editor on the portal and just double click it and turn it off. Yep. And that's, one of the huge advantages of floor plans. You can do a whole unfinished basement, turn off all the panoramas. And although, you can't see it visually, you can see the floor plan and you still get some value out of that space, even if it's not included in the total square footage. And even if it's not visually shown, at least you've got a floor plan showing, that there's all that space down there and that it has potential, for example. People get really weird about showing large, empty, unfinished spaces. I don't know why. I see them as like awesome because they're like just pure rec room potential. Think of all the guitars I could line up on the walls after I drywall them in. Okay, I answered that one. Oh, I skipped one. Whoops. If I shoot an area to just include it on the floor plan, can I just deselect the pan? Yeah, so I just answered that. So you can totally turn a pano, any panos you want off or on. We have a little bit of time. I'll go into that. So you have full control over the visuals. You can turn off and on anything you want. So sometimes that means you shoot spaces that are ugly with the knowledge that you're absolutely going to turn them off. Sometimes you shoot extra panoramas purely for experimentation, knowing that you're going to turn them off. So it's going to sound very artistic, but what you want to do with your panos is you want to sculpt them into something that is effective and attractive. So, it's a balance. It's like anything else. Too many looks weird, too few, and you compromise the experience. So what I mean by that is you want to have enough scan positions so that people can move throughout the property and see what they need to see. But you don't want to have so many that they have to like click on the visuals like 50 times to get from like the dining room to the living room. And also it makes the floor plan look weird, right? Because you'll have all these dots and it looks like, it's been peppered. So my suggestion would be to, especially if you just started, shoot a lot, and then go into your iGUIDE after you've had it drafted, and then just think about it. Be like, what if someone's going to go to this tour? What experience are they going to have? And I would say that, and I've also done this. I would say the number one thing people don't do when they create like virtual tours is they never look at them. I probably didn't look at the first like 400 I made. I didn't care. I just shot them and then we sent them over. But like, if you go in and look at the tour, you learn a lot about like what it is that you're making. I spend all this time on photos and making sure they're perfect, in the tours, you just send them on. It doesn't matter, right? But it does matter because you can make a few little tweaks and you can keep yourself out of a lot of trouble. So I tend to sort of err on the side of caution most of the time. So I'll turn off a lot of panoramas that may or may not get me into trouble, messy rooms or whatever. but you can have a conversation about those. You don't need to turn them off. You can always ask your client. Either way, overshoot, shoot too many panoramas, and then dial it back. And then what you'll have happen is that you'll have some that look better than others for no apparent reason, and then you'll also have mistakes. You'll have a panorama that's got like, I don't know, some guy walking through the background. You didn't see him when you were shooting. And then no big deal. You've got lots of extras. So you can kind of turn it off and create a nice looking tour, but that still gives people the ability to get the information that they need and see things that they want to see. All right, done. Setting up the initial view for each shot, something that's simple can really improve. Yes, 100%. So setting up the first thing people see. Yep, exactly. If the first thing people see is a blank wall or, the side of a couch or something strange, that's can be very off-putting, very odd. So that's really important, especially if you're navigating via the floor plans, because when you click on any dot, the first thing you see is whatever the camera was first pointed at or what people have set it to as well. So yes, 100%. Right, a toilet. Well, I mean, you got to have a good toilet shot. Every iGUIDE or real estate listing needs a really solid shot of that toilet, preferably lid open, maybe contents inside. I don't know, just for fun. And a Christmas tree. So the listing just makes sense in July. Okay, I was gonna say answer that. Okay, good. All right, let's call it there. I think we're good. Unless anyone, there's a chat. Hold on. Is there a way to depict ceiling height in the floor plan? No, but you can get it using measure mode. Oh, you already said it. Measure mode 2. I don't have that on this particular iGUIDE, but you can do height measurements wherever you want. Ceiling height is a tricky thing. So I used to do HVAC calculations or heated volume calculations for houses. And ceiling height isn't just as simple. You can even see it here in this image, actually. It's not as simple as just like one height for the whole house. So we actually did provide that for a bit. We found it was more trouble than it was worth, because if you have like sloped ceilings, vaulted ceilings, anything that's not just like really flat or different ceiling heights, then giving one number doesn't reflect that. So the best thing to do is just use measure mode 2, measure the ceiling height for the area that you're specifically looking for and go with that 100%. HDR, of course, I almost forgot. Okay, thank goodness. Thank goodness you reminded me. All right, so I'll give you the skinny on the new HDR update. So what we've done, I say we, I didn't do it. What the software developers did is they put the HDR algorithm from IMS5 into Planix. It's very cool. So the built-in Rico HDR, the look and feel of it is a little like, I don't like it. It's kind of desaturated. The contrast is low. It's a little weird. You can certainly bring it to, you can get it where you need it to go and stitch by adding contrast back in. But now you have extra options. I can't show them to you, but I'll describe them. So in the settings section under HDR, instead of on off, it is now a series of options. So you've got off as well, but you have on and use the Rico version. You have on and you have iGUIDE with a bracket setting. And then you have 2 other options for iGUIDE with different bracket settings. So they mirror kind of what's in IMS5. So you don't have full control, like you can't specifically change the brackets, but very few people actually did that in IMS5. They just use the default. So the defaults are -5 + 2, which is a very standard, it's not standard, it's a bit weird, but it's very iGUIDE standard for interiors. So if you're gonna pick one to use, that's the one you want -5 + 2. There's also -3 + 3. That's just a kind of standard run-of-the-mill 3 under, 3 over exposure value kind of HDR. And then there's a -1 + 1. So here's how I would use those. So for retaining highlights, you want -5 + 2. Can we take panoramas for balconies to show views around? Oh yeah, for sure. You can totally do that. You can do it in 2 ways. You can just use the iGUIDE camera, shoot the balcony. You can go outdoors, do whatever you want. Or you can use a separate camera, the 360, and you can add them in as user panoramas. We've got separate webinars on that, so I won't go into it, but yep, 100%. Take the camera outside, not like in the rain, obviously, but like, unless you have an umbrella, I guess. But yeah, so the HDR settings, the whole point of them is that they are better looking right out of the camera. So they're going to have better contrast, better saturation. So that's cool. And then the highlights are going to be better. So what you think makes for good highlights, it is arguable. Everyone has a different opinion, but I think they're better. And they're definitely different to my taste, for sure. There's more detail, 100%. So I think they look better. But the best thing to do when you first get to firmware is to straight up just go to a room where it has a window shoot it, and then change the setting. Choose the Rico one and shoot it, and then choose the iGUIDE one and shoot it. Maybe try the different settings out, see what you think. You're going to notice that of the 3 iGUIDE settings, they're like low, medium, high. The high one is going to be the best for interiors. The medium one is just, sometimes it's a little different. It's just an option. And then the low one, -1, +1 EV, that's, kind of when you're standing outside by like a pool, that's not when that's like more of an outdoor thing. You would only use that if you just want something a little more interesting than straight up no HDR. But that one's a little dangerous. So if you have that one on and you're in an area like you're outside, but you're on a porch, well, you'll still have pretty dark shadows. You'll still have pretty bright highlights. So that really wouldn't do as well as -5 +1. And the reason I say that is those used to be labeled differently on IMS5, that the -5 +2 was labeled interior and the -1 +1 was labeled exterior. And so people sometimes mistakenly thought, oh, I should use this -1 +1 outside. But no, don't do that. Only think about it in terms of like dynamic range. If you're in an environment with really deep shadows and really bright highlights, then you want the strongest version, -5 +2. If you're outside and you've got a few shadows, okay, -1 +1. And then -3 +3 is just a weird one for the middle. Yes. Yes. Okay. I answered it. We're good. Let me check the chat. -5 +2. There's one. Nice job. My D810. Yeah, I like the HDR. I think it's really great. It's really nice. Okay, we're gonna call it there. Thank you all so much for listening to me for like an hour. I really appreciate it. Like I said, we have some cool master classes coming up. We're going to take a break, obviously, for Christmas, but please join the Facebook group and go say stuff and put pictures on there. I've got some cool content coming for next year for that. And go subscribe to the YouTube channel. All right. See you guys later. Have a great day. Thanks so much.